the end of the day, you have to do things in life that you enjoy doing because that's what life is about. You want to enjoy life. And yes, there's going to be periods of time where you're not going to be able to do everything you like to do, but there's going to be times when you can. And you want to make sure that you have the right energy and you feel good to do them.
Hey, welcome to another episode of the Coffee Break Podcast, where our mission is to share business ideas, practices, and strategies while we enjoy our cup of coffee. Today, we're going to be talking with guest Michael Levitt. He is talking on the subject of burnout. He experienced it himself, and he's got some very valuable advice if you maybe think you're experiencing burnout, or maybe you have no clue if you're about to experience burnout because you're in the throngs of it right now. It's going to be an interesting conversation. I want to invite you into that momentarily. But before we do, I do want to invite you to subscribe, if you haven't already, to the podcast. It is available at Loc-Doc.net/podcast or wherever you're listening to this right now. Just make sure you hit the subscribe button because we have a brand new episode coming out every Tuesday morning at 9 a.m. We also have a video version of this as well. It's available on YouTube and Facebook. You can find it there by searching LOCDOCINC. And we invite you to subscribe there as well, because we've got this plus other great content that comes out every single week, information that will help you and your business answer frequently asked questions about our organization and the problems that we're helping our customers solve. So we invite you to subscribe there as well. Now, I want you to get prepared because we've got a very intriguing conversation about burnout and how signs that you can know it's coming and ways that you can stop it and prevent it. So let's jump into this conversation now.
We got so much to say. We got a podcast to make. We're sipping on lattes, and it's time for a coffee break. It's time for a coffee break. Oh yeah.
All right, Michael, welcome to the podcast. Welcome to the afternoon here, and hopefully you have your coffee. Are you a coffee drinker?
I am a coffee drinker. I've had my allocated coffee for the day, and now I'm drinking H2O.
Well, that's so I've got my H2O over here, but I basically rotate between mostly coffee and then sometimes H2O. We were talking here before we got started, and you are currently in Toronto, Canada, which I was sharing a story with you about a couple of years ago. We were up in Toronto and we went on a whole coffee tour, and it was a wild experience. We tasted cortados at like 6 different coffee shops or 5 different coffee shops, and to the point where we were just really had the jitters. So it was a blast, but it was definitely a cool visit. Again, thank you for being here. We're going to be talking a little bit about your book and also about burnout and some of the things that are associated with it. But before we do that, it's rapid fire, 5 randomly selected questions just to get under your skin with unknown point values, and we'll score you at the end. Is that cool for you?
It's very cool for me. Let's go.
All right. Number 1, how do you make tough decisions?
Through reflection and previous experience or leaning on mentors.
Really? So what's the last tough decision that you had to make?
Terminating an employee.
Oh, all right. Those are no fun.
No, I've been on both sides of that equation, and I will say with confidence, it's harder to fire somebody than to get fired.
Yes.
Neither are fun, but terminating an employee is impacting their life, and it's not something I take lightly. Most definitely.
One of the questions that popped up here, I'm going to skip it because I think it's an easy one. It said, would you ever shave your head? And I don't.
No, I'd never do that. Why would I even consider doing that? Yeah. You know how much money I save on shampoo in a lifetime now? It's great.
Yeah, exactly. All right, next question. What do you think we owe each other as human beings?
Understanding. Just seek to understand each other in this very divisive world that we find ourselves in. Seek to understand the other person's point of view without judgment. Just seek clarity on why that individual feels a certain way on a particular subject matter. Share your thoughts on the thing, and you'll probably find there's a lot more in common than not. But I think that's the biggest gift that we can give each other is just understanding, and obviously coupled with that is love.
There's an author, Brene Brown. I'm sure you're familiar. Her book, Dare to Lead, one of the things she talks about in there is, and I've been hanging on to it for quite some time, is starting with assuming positive intent. When you have a conversation with somebody, when you say understanding, it reminds me of that. I think it totally changes the conversation when you start a conversation assuming positive intent with somebody versus, because it kind of ties hand in hand with understanding. It goes a long way instead of the opposite, obviously starting with negative intent or assuming negative intent. So that's very cool. All right, here's next question is, what are 3 words that describe you?
Dedicated, loyal, happy. That's a good way to put it.
Dedicated, loyal, and happy. I was asked one time a question of what is one word that you would want people to remember you by? And that was a hard to narrow it down to one thing. What would you say for that? One of those 3 words, which one would you want to be the one thing that people knew you by?
Dedicated, for sure.
Dedicated. All right.
If I commit to something, I commit to it.
Awesome. Here's the next question for you. Who is the most interesting person that you know?
Most interesting person is probably my buddy King. He does a lot of market research, lots of marketing, social media, world traveler. He's constantly getting involved in all kinds of different things. I'll look on social media and I'm like, what are you doing now? And, this pandemic, unfortunately, has, kind of kicked his travel bug a little bit to the side. But I told him, hold tight. You'll be able to get on a plane soon enough because you'll find him in New York or in Paris or who knows where. And it's just kind of like, hi, I'm in Paris. Oh, hi. How's it going? It's like most people plan for those kind of things.
Sure.
And I guess planning, to be prepared for something is probably, he is prepared, but I think long term, he's more of a just let's do it. And it's done. It's like, oh, okay. For me, I'm like, I need a little more structure on that. Although I'm sure I'd have a blast if I just said, sure, let's go to Paris. Why not?
Yep. Just those people that are just willing to go. It seemed more sporadic, but I'm sure they have some type of a plan through the whole process. It just, to be able to adapt that quick is pretty cool. Mm-hmm. All right. Last question that we'll ask on here is and this may be a little more, but I don't know. But if you were to find out that you were going to die tomorrow, mm-hmm. what would you do today?
Make sure I call all of my close family members, tell them that I love them. Give them whatever information they need from me, from like a password standpoint or something like that. Or here's where I'm hiding all the Krugerrand coins, that kind of stuff,
Yeah.
But yeah, that would be that. And I would do that. And I do that as quickly as possible and tell them, look, I know you want to talk to me for hours, can't. And then the rest of the time I would just make sure that I do whatever I could to see a sunrise or a sunset, maybe both, and just relax, drink some coffee, maybe some tea, maybe a good IPA later on, and then see what happens next.
There you go. The passwords thing, just randomly calling people and saying, here's my passwords. Here's the passcode to my phone. You're good to go.
Yep, exactly. This will get you there. Cut off my thumb, and then you're good for or if it's FaceTime, that might be a little different,
It's going to be, going to be rough. All right, cool. Well, congratulations. You passed rapid fire. We'll give you a score of 632.
Perfect.
All right. Well, let's jump into the conversation. You've got some pictures of some books behind you. You've got a lot of memorabilia behind you. One of the things that you have over your, I guess, left shoulder, the way I'm seeing it's on the right of the screen, is called Burnout Proof. Talk to me a little bit about burnout. What does burnout mean?
Burnout is when someone has prolonged stress. And if you don't have prolonged stress, you don't burn out. It happens when you're overwhelmed with life, you're overcommitted. Life is not fun. And it doesn't happen overnight. It builds up slowly. And for everybody, it can be different. Some people can burn out within a few weeks. Some people might take a few years. But ultimately, it's where you're just constantly physically and mentally drained and your head's in a fog and you're not enjoying life. And it's not a fun place to be. I know firsthand what it feels like. It's not fun.
What was your process with dealing with and understanding burnout?
Well, for me, it happened because I wasn't taking care of myself, and I was working some insane hours, basically 6 a.m. to 11 p.m., 7 days a week for a couple of years. And I was working with a startup healthcare organization. And not, ironically, you're supposed to take care of yourself in healthcare. I wasn't being a good model to anybody, including myself. And nutrition was non-existent, no activity whatsoever, because I was working all those hours and quit doing things in life that I enjoyed doing. And then over a period of 369 days from May 2009 to May 2010, I had a heart attack that should have killed me. And then I lost my job during the Great Recession. My car was repossessed. And then finally my home foreclosed. So all of those things happened in a year, and all those things happened because I was burned out. And it was the greatest thing that could have ever happened to me, because it gave me an opportunity to have a second chance, for one, and really take a long, hard look on how I was living, why I was making the choices I was making. Why was I doing what I was doing? Why didn't I eat well? Why was I not exercising? Why did I quit doing things in life that I enjoyed doing? And once I figured out all of those things, then I made the necessary adjustments in my life to not do the things that were bad for me and do more of the things that were good. And it made such a tremendous difference in my life. And ultimately from that, it birthed the work that I do today.
It's interesting on that perspective. I can identify with several of the things that you said, and for many years, I didn't keep those extreme hours within a few. We'll comb it back about 2 or 3 hours a day, but the same thing, kind of up in the morning, not eating well, and through the day, just constant go until late at night, in eating bad, and then going straight to bed, falling asleep, waking up and doing it all over again. And I'd often remarked to my wife and to those that I'd spoken with of, I feel like I'm getting up every day knowing that I'm going to get punched in the face multiple times and not knowing where it's going to come from, but I'm getting ready to go in for it, and it was a tough spot to be at. And it definitely opens up your eyes for needing to understand, how do I change this? So the interesting thing that I want to ask, though, is you just said it's one of the best things that ever happened to you because it brought you to a point of having to kind of reassess. It kind of put you in that spot. Obviously, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but based off of everything that you just said, had you not had that, all of the course of those things happen, you would probably have still continued to do that. If that was the best thing that happened to you, why do you not think that should happen to everybody else?
Well, I definitely don't want anybody to go through those losses. It was definitely traumatic. When your cardiologist, who's about ready to put 2 stents in your left anterior descending artery, which is known as the widowmaker, because typically they have blockages in that artery, don't survive. I did. But, he tells me, it's like, well, you had blockages in your left anterior descending artery. And he looked at me and said, you should be dead. And I looked back at him. I said, I see you skipped bedside manner class in medical school. He laughed, I laughed, and then he explained the procedure, and everything was great. And we had a good conversation about it and all of that stuff. My former wife and my mom that was in the room when he said, you should be dead, they weren't laughing.
Yeah.
They were a little, I think they were a little taken back from that comment. But the reason why I say is good, because our choices, and that's burnout is a choice. And I know sometimes people hear that and they go, what? No one chooses to burn out. Your choices, your habits, your beliefs, your thought patterns, and all the choices you make in life create ingredients where you can put yourself in a situation that can turn into prolonged stress, and prolonged stress turns into burnout. So for me, being wiser on what I choose from everything. And I want to frame it that majority of people that are burned out or are burning out do not need to reinvent their life. I did, because again, I was not living an ideal life. Most people have to make little adjustments here and there on things, and it'll make things easier. And I think that's the big takeaway is, why do you want to live in this community? Why do you want to work at this job? Why do you want to have this house, this car, this relationship, these hobbies? This team is the team you root for, even though they haven't won a championship since black and white photo days. That's a Toronto Maple Leafs jab, by the way. It's the original 6 NHL cities. All the original 6 teams, their last Stanley Cup are all in color except the Maple Leafs. So, and not being originally from Toronto, I'm not a Maple Leafs fan, so I ride it and enjoy it, and I get jabs from all my friends here. But hey, show me your Stanley Cup ring. But anyway, I segue. But I think ultimately it boils down to, if you're going through burnout, then instead of going through this deep dive that you should do at some point of figuring out why you burned out, it's more important for you to, okay, what can I do to ease this stress, to get off of this hamster wheel or this treadmill of burnout? What can I do to slow things down so I can actually start feeling better? And that will have a ripple effect that's on the positive side.
We understand the frustrations HOA board members and property managers face when deciding the best solution for their HOA and pool security. Should we use a keypad, hand out keys, or install a key card system? Do we even need cameras? These are some of the questions that are difficult to navigate, and we're here to help. At Loc-Doc Security, we've spent over 20 years working with homeowners associations and property managers to find the system that best fits the pool and HOA needs. Camera systems for the front gate or front entrance, key card systems for the pool gates, or simply updating the gate so that it meets safety and code compliance. We like to take the guesswork out of the process to answer any questions and help find the right solution. Our mission is to help you protect your people and your property, and that includes pools. Contact our team today to schedule your free consultation for your community.
If I'm the guy or the gal that's driving to work right now, listening to this at 6 o'clock in the morning, or maybe I'm listening to it driving home at night at 9, 10 o'clock at night, and I'm not quite sure if I'm in that phase. What are some things that I should be? Is there like a survey that I fill out? Like what are the key factors that are going to say, hey, you may be on the path? If you're not already there, maybe you're already on the path.
Yeah, there's online surveys and things like that. They can do things, but I've found that commonly there's about 4 or 5 things that you can look out for that can give you a pretty good indication that you might be on that path to burnout. The first one is, how are you sleeping? How's your sleep? Are you getting good, restful sleep night after night, or are you tossing and turning all the time? And has this been over a couple days or a few days or a few weeks or a few months? And if you're not getting good sleep, that has such a horrible impact on everything that you do, from your cognitive ability, your ability to communicate, to listen, to hear, your digestive system. It's so important. Sleep is the magic pill. If anybody wants one, is like, get good sleep. Other signs you can be on the lookout for is, and they're tied into that, is if you're not motivated to do anything. And I'm not talking about Monday morning lack of motivation. We all got that. But if there are things in life you normally like to do, whether it's going to sporting events or concerts or the movies or hanging out with friends, if you stop doing that and you quit going to those things that you used to love to do, and there's no other reason behind it other than just, well, I'm tired, I'm working so much. Well, that's definitely a sign that you need to look out for that, because even when you're working a lot of hours, and there may be a situation in some of our fields. Originally, I was a public accountant, tax season. You work long hours, but that's not all year. It's a portion of the year. So if you're working long hours and it's just a season-based thing, then that's one thing. But if it's prolonged over time, even if you can't escape those long hours, you can still do things. So instead of going out for drinks with your friend, go grab coffee with them. Or instead of watching a movie tonight on Netflix or whatever, okay, watch an episode of a show you like. Okay, you're not allocating an hour and a half or 2 hours, but you found a half an hour that you can do something. Just doing something will help with that. An additional sign that I see a lot too is you're just making more mistakes and you're just foggy. You forget things. You're driving and you completely miss the turn to go to work, and you've been working there for 10 years. Like, how did I miss Scott Lake Road? How in the world? I just blew right by it, and because your head's in a daze, and thankfully you didn't run a red light, or at least I hope you didn't. And there's not one of those cameras, because you'll get a piece of paper in the mail, and those are fun. Not that I've ever had that happen to me before, but no, there's one. It's like, look, like, wow, that's a pretty high res camera. It's like, why don't they use those cameras for like crimes? In the crimes, like, have you seen this person? It's like all pixelated. You can't. Yeah, is that male, female, non-binary? I don't know what that is. It's like, but the camera for catching you. I mean, you can actually see the the paint chips on your trunk. You're like, okay, come on. Let's everybody upgrade the cameras if we could, please. So you've got that. And then finally, if you find yourself more irritable or short-fused, and that's not your normal demeanor, that's definitely a warning sign. And I'm seeing that a lot in society these days as we are navigating through this pandemic, even though things, depending on where you live, tend to be a little bit more open. But it just seems like people are a lot more short-fused than before, and that's concerning to me.
So change in sleep behavior over a prolonged period of time. It's kind of pulling away from doing some of the things that you enjoy, finding yourself making common mistakes or silly mistakes that you would typically not make, and then kind of being having a higher or a lower threshold of being irritable. Those are some things that you may want to process through and go, hey, maybe I need to check back here and go, hold on a second, I need to change some things. So we talked a little bit about some signs that may bring you that. So I've checked off of 3 of 4 of those boxes, and now what do I do to change it? Because I mean, I can't stop working. I've got bills to pay. I've got a full calendar over the next 2 months. I've got all these things. So what am I supposed to do to change the trajectory that I'm on?
Going back to sleep, that's one of the best, and hopefully people aren't falling asleep at this interview, but sleep is so critical. So instead of buying that brand new television that the big box retail store is selling for the next Super Bowl, maybe allocate some money to buy a brand new mattress that's really comfortable. Spend the money on a bed. I've got neighbors in the condo building that I live in, and I ran into them not too long ago, and they came back from a local bedding store, and they each had pillows, and they were in boxes, and these pillows cost $250 each. Yeah. $500, 2 pillows. I'm guessing most of us haven't spent $500 in an entire life on a pillow, much less on 2 of them. And I'm like, what's in them? What's does it come with the ultimate Amex card or something? And no limits or what? And they explain, and they both work in very stressful jobs. But when you see them, you'd never know it because they're happy-go-lucky and living life. It's because they've spent a lot of money in their pillows. I didn't ask about their mattress, but I'm going to make an assumption that they dropped some decent money on their bedding too. The reason why it's so important is because sleep repairs the damage that we do to ourselves on a daily basis. No matter how healthy we live, we still do damage to ourselves. And getting good, restful sleep, your body is repairing all the damage we do. Your gut processes all the food, your gut bacteria and all that stuff tends to work while you're sleeping. So if your body is getting rest, that means all the night stock, basically, in a grocery store analogy, is stocking the shelves for the next day. And if you're not getting good sleep, well, guess what? All the damage that you did today piles on to tomorrow's damage. And the next day, and the next day, and the next day. And then you too get to understand about Coversil coming in 8 milligrams for blood pressure, or cholesterol medications, or all the fun stuff that I used to be on. Now, side note, I'm not on any heart medication anymore because I made the necessary changes in my life to get off of those medications. And apparently I'm rare. Apparently a lot of people don't do that, but I did. But getting the good sleep is so important. So spend the money on it, because think about it. Where do we spend the most consecutive hours of our day in one spot?
Yeah.
Should be our bed. Sometimes it might feel like it's the office, or, maybe the recliner or the couch, but consecutive, not moving for a period of time, it would be your bed. So spend the money on your bed. Getting better sleep will have a positive ripple effect in your life. The second thing, and it ties into the gut bacteria thing, is, and I did this a few months ago, and it was a game changer for me. Although my sleep has been good, I obtained one of those food intolerance tests, because I have some food allergies.
Yeah.
And I was tested on over 250 different types of foods. Mm-hmm. And I was alarmed to see some of the things that I have intolerances to that I was blissfully unaware. A lot of them I knew, but some of them I'm like, I'm allergic to that, and that. And I'm like, And the reason why it's important for you to understand what you have intolerances to is, again, your gut, anytime it has a food that you have an intolerance to, it's more or less, it's not poison to your body, but it might as well be. So your body has this foreign object and goes, what do I do with this? I can't process it the way that I should. So it has to do something in order to make it flush through your system. If you're not introducing those foods to your system, then the foods that are good for you, and that could vary, it doesn't, a lot of people have different things. Then that means your gut's not working as hard, which means your body can use the other energy to work through all the other things. And again, getting restful sleep and you feeling better. It's, for me, again, I'm going to change this and do this. And it has made a big difference in how I feel, my energy levels and all that. And even like going back to what we were talking about before, the couple cups of coffee. I used to drink a ton of coffee, and now I've cut way back, and I have the energy levels in the afternoon that I do first thing in the morning after I get that first cup, because my body and the foods that I'm eating are good for me. And that's the thing. It's like, I could easily tell people, okay, eat kale salad and no, you know what? Some people, you may have an intolerance to kale salad. That'd be the worst thing for me to tell you. I think 100% of us have intolerance to kale salad, but the dietitians and nutritionists are going to be mad at me about that. It's not true, but it might as well be, but I know some people like it. I tried it. Believe me, I've tried it in a variety of different ways, and it does not work for me, but for other people it does. But finding out those foods that are good for you, you get really creative. And that's one of the things this pandemic has done. I know a lot of people learned how to cook differently or cook better. And I think that's going to be really good for long-term health and learning how to prepare different types of foods that are good for you. So that would be the big takeaway for that.
So sleep and eating, those are two big factors to kind of slow down that burnout. And we've had a nutritionist on the podcast a couple of times now, and she talked a lot about those variations and variables, and how the types of, basically that food that you're putting in your body is your fuel, obviously, and making sure you're putting the right fuel in. I mean, you could go to a car analogy, right? If you are not putting the right octane fuel in your car, it's either going to cause other damage if it's through that process. And for us as individuals, it's easy to swing by and grab whatever is fast and convenient, but that may not be what we need to fuel our bodies correctly, which then would also specifically impact our sleep. And if you're not sleeping well, then all of the other factors do play a big part in it. It's interesting too that some of the stuff you're talking about, because I'm kind of processing a lot of this information as you're saying it, and not having good sleep is a major deterrent, because it directly affects all of these other things that you're talking about. I lose focus, I lose energy, I don't really want to do certain things, the irritability, and then actually my engagement with other people is bad, because I'm just not a fun person to be around as a whole. And a lot of that comes back to your gut health, to your the nutrition that you're putting in your body. I would have never associated all of those things back to burnout, but I could also go back to different points in my life where I probably would have felt in that similar vein, and I was doing all of those things. I was not eating well and I was not sleeping well. And those two things coinciding with each other affected other areas of my life without really knowing it.
Can you copy this key? That's a question we get asked about 3,422 times a year. And how can you actually be sure that the person who asked that question is supposed to get a copy of that key? Well, we think you should always know who can copy your keys to your business and your home, because it could be your neighbor, an old employee, a contractor, or even worse, your mother-in-law. At Loc-Doc Security, we believe in protected key systems, so you always know who has a copy of your key. To find out more, visit locdoc.net or stop by our Charlotte location. Loc-Doc Security, helping you protect your people and your property.
Two other things that are really helpful. Obviously, I'm going to talk about getting active and moving around a little bit. This pandemic, unfortunately, has kept a lot of us sitting down a lot longer than we normally would.
Mm-hmm.
You know, even if we went into the office and we're like, well, I sit at a desk job. You're still getting up. You're going to get some coffee. You're going to the bathroom. You're going to grab lunch. You're driving or commuting in back and forth. So you're moving around. Or this working from home environment, you're rolling out of bed. You're grabbing the laptop and you're sitting down wherever, and there you are. And we're not moving as much. So get some activity in. Of course, it didn't help that a lot of the gyms were closed as well during the pandemic. So, but there's no shortage of exercise videos online, but I do implore people, don't take on a new exercise regime without consulting with a medical professional, because the last thing you want to do is injure yourself and end up in the emergency room, because our hospitals in many jurisdictions are overwhelmed still with people with the COVID pandemic. So we don't hurt yourself, but there's ways to get in a little bit more activity. And then finally, and I talked a little bit about this before, you got to do things in life you enjoy doing, even in a period of lockdown or in working long hours. You still have to allocate some time every week to do things that are beneficial to you. I call them self-care. A lot of times people think self-care, they're thinking, okay, you're taking meditation, moments of Zen, baths, all that. That's great. If that's what self-care means to you, that's great. But you know what? Listening to your favorite music, or going for a nature trail hike, or going for a drive, or sitting in a coffee shop, like the example you said, sitting down in a coffee shop and listening to the music, and just tasting what you're drinking, taking a moment to actually taste it. When people are stressed and burned out, and they're just literally, okay, I got to eat before I get back to work, are they actually tasting what they're eating? No, they're just basically inhaling it, like my dog does. It's like, do you actually chew that? It's like, sometimes I don't think he does. So his teeth are still good. I don't think he chews. It's just like, oh, gone. But at the end of the day, you have to do things in life that you enjoy doing, because that's what life is about. You want to enjoy life. And yes, there's going to be periods of time where you're not going to be able to do everything you like to do, but there's going to be times when you can. And you want to make sure that you have the right energy and you feel good to do them. Because when you don't feel good, when you actually have time, it's like, okay, I got the weekend off. I'm too tired. I'm going to sleep. It's like, yeah, but you could go do all these other things you normally like doing. Well, I'm too tired. Like, no. Then focus on getting good sleep during the week, even when it's busy. Then that way you'll have the energy to do those things you like doing. It makes life so much easier, and it helps with stress reduction, doing things you enjoy doing, hanging out with friends, and doing some exercising or just moving.
Yep.
It all has a positive ripple effect. We are more connected than we think we are, and little adjustments here and there can have a real big positive ripple effect if you do them.
In your study, your research, and going through this process, have you identified or seen any correlation to maybe certain personality types or different types of folks, people that have a higher propensity to fall into a burnout category, or kind of overdo it in certain areas versus others that are may just have less propensity to do that. Is there some type of correlation there?
There is. I've been speaking at conferences around the globe over these last couple of years, and I've pretty much spoke with every industry under the sun.
Mm-hmm.
But there are some commonalities. One of the biggest ones that I see is type A personalities that are driven,
mm-hmm.
or they have some people pleasing type of tendencies. They want to do well for each other, or
mm-hmm.
help people out and be the best and bend over backwards for this person and do a great job, be a pillar in the community. All of those things, very noble.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing wrong with those, but you got to have boundaries around that, because you shouldn't cut off your feet to give somebody shoes. And sometimes we do that. We literally don't take care of ourselves, and we're giving things that we actually need for ourselves. If you take care of yourself first,
mm-hmm.
and make you the best version of you that you can be, then when you do choose to give, they're getting a much better version of what you are giving them than you could have ever done before. But yeah, type A personalities tend to be the common one, where they're really successful as they're rising through the ranks in whatever career they happen to be in.
Mm-hmm.
And then they get up to a newer level, and that requires different skill set. And they're trying to work the same way they did when they were a manager, and now they're in the C-suite, and different skill set, different tools. You got to take your hands off the wheel a little bit and just direct and let somebody else kind of steer. And sometimes it's hard for them to do that, and they struggle with it. And
well, you would imagine that type A personalities, people, and even people pleasers, those are the folks, people that are typically have a less likelihood of listening to advice of following your structure here. How do you break through that, right? Because I'm very driven, very focused, very moving forward in a positive direction, and then also I've got to listen to somebody tell me that I need to slow down and pay attention to sleep and eating and all those types of things. I don't have time to listen to that. How do you kind of break through that conversation?
Yeah, for me, when I first started my business, it was I worked with a lot of executives first thing in the morning. Kind of where the breakfast leadership name came about was, breakfast. It's like, okay, let's get them before they get into the trenches, because once you get, many of us, once we get into the work zone, we're not going to be able to break away and learn about something and all that. That's why I think lunch and learns are a disaster, other than you're getting free food, but you're giving up your break, which you're breaking your people, and you're asking them to learn something when they're hungry, or they're eating something that, it's stale pizza or whatever they're feeding them. And it's just never good, but won't get on that soapbox too much. But I think, again, that's a great question, because I'm too busy to work on this. Okay. Not to scare you, but when they can't go through your arm to put the stents in your heart, and they got to go through your groin area. And in order for the bleeding to stop in the groin area, they literally vice you to a bed for 5 hours where you can't move. Then maybe you'll have time.
Yeah.
And that's what happened to me. I was literally viced onto a bed, laying on my back for hours, and couldn't move because, it was a pretty good vice. I couldn't have moved if I wanted to. And it's because they had to put enough pressure down to stop the bleeding, and in order for the artery that they went into to get to my heart. I really wish they could have gone through the arm, but at the end of the day, it's like people say, well, I'll just work through it.
Yeah.
I don't have time. You don't want to crash and burn, because the problem is if you crash and burn, like in my situation, I was off of work for months, and I could not contribute at work, or I was recovering at home. So all the obligations, the requirements, the things you have yourself lined up for in life, you're not going to be able to do any of it if you have a health scare. If it hits your health, I'm very fortunate. I really am. I know that. I don't forget that. And I don't want to see anybody flirt with that. But prolonged stress and burnout takes a toll on your health. And it can lead to stroke or anything. And real quick, the World Health Organization released a study, it was some data in 2016. Over 750,000 people annually, globally, die every year of heart disease or stroke if they work more than 55 hours a week. Now, that's 5-year-old data.
Yeah.
I'm anticipating that number is probably closer to 1 million people globally a year die now, based on everything else that I'm seeing. You don't want to be in that stat.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there's other factors in there, but the singular thing was more than 55 hours a week. So if you're working more than 55 hours a week, okay, make sure that you're taking care of yourself as best you can to offset those things. Because if you don't, well, then you might be a stat, and I don't want to read about stats.
It's interesting on all accounts. Health, sleep, work habits, all of those things have heavy correlation, and people that are driven, focused on trying to accomplish something will typically put those other things off of the back burner. And as you just said, kind of that deferred time. I don't have time to do it now, but at some point in time, the debt is coming due, and you're going to have to figure out how to cash that check. So very, very good advice, Michael. I really appreciate your insights today. If folks want to find out more about your book or anything else you've got going on, what's the best way for them to track you down?
Yeah, they can go to breakfastleadership.com. There's a link at the top of the page to buy my book. It's on Amazon and other booksellers. And I'm on most of the social media channels under the letter B and then Fast Leadership. Don't put that on a license plate. Or hashtag Breakfast Leadership. You can probably find me that way as well.
Very cool, man. Well, I also understand now why the gentleman that you said was your buddy King was an interesting person, because he makes fast decisions because you were an accountant.
That's true. That was my original my career. Well, my first job was bagging groceries. Well, but which was a great job to start off with. But
so very calculated risk. You like to have a good plan. Very cool.
Exactly.
All right, Michael, thanks again for the conversation today. Lots of great information. I've got a couple of pages of notes here. Some things to consider. Better sleep. Make sure that you're getting involved with your nutrition and making good health choices there. Those are a really good start that everybody can start on the path. If you have interest in that, we have a couple of other episodes on our podcast that you can go back and look at relating to nutrition. Dahlia Gordon has been a guest multiple times talking about the importance of health and how it relates to your work environment, the importance of nutrition and how it impacts your work environment. So make sure you go check that out. Great resource. If you don't already, get connected to a nutritionist. It will help you understand what is good for your body, what's not good for your body, and I definitely can't recommend that enough. Thank you again for joining us today. Reminder to subscribe if you haven't already, because we've got another great episode coming your way next Tuesday morning at 9:00, and we'll see you then. Have a great day, and thank you for joining us on the Coffee Break Podcast.